Hey everyone, and welcome to Crime Stats Daily. This is where we go beyond the headlines to examine crime through verified statistics, official reports, and the criminal justice system. I'm Kim. Let's go. Now, today we are covering a breaking federal case announced yesterday, Monday, July the 26th, that was announced by the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Federal prosecutors have unsealed an indictment charging Candace Johnston, also known as Queen, with leading the Red Life Militia, a subset of the nationwide Bloods gang. And according to prosecutors, Johnston faces 4 federal charges, and that includes racketeering, conspiracy, murder and aid of racketeering, murder using a firearm, and conspiracy to receive firearms. Now, before we begin, it's important to remember that these are allegations contained in a federal indictment. An indictment is not a conviction, and under our justice system, even every defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in court. Now, according to the Justice Department, investigators allege that Johnston served as a leader of the Red Life Militia, which prosecutors describe as a set within the United Blood Nation. That's a faction of the nationwide Bloods street gang. The indictment alleges that the organization engaged in the violent criminal activity that included murder, assault, firearms trafficking, narcotics trafficking, robberies, and the promotion of prostitution. Federal prosecutors also alleged that Johnston openly displayed her leadership role through social media posts featuring gang signs, tattoos, and other gang identifiers. Now, according to the indictment, prosecutors alleged that on May 31st of 2017, Johnston ordered a subordinate gang member to rob and murder Noel Farrow, who investigators described as a former drug supplier to the gang. The indictment alleges the robbery resulted in Farrow being shot and killed in the Bronx. If proven, this alleged crime became one of the central acts supporting the federal racketeering charges announced this week. Now, we need to look at the timeline of how and when this occurred. Johnston now faces, as I mentioned, 4 racketeering charges: racketeering conspiracy, murder and aid of racketeering, murder using a firearm, and conspiracy to receive firearms transported from another state. And these are among the most serious charges that are available under federal law. If convicted, several carry potential life sentences, and some of the statutes authorize even more severe penalties. However, any sentence would ultimately be determined by the court if there is a conviction. Now, the question becomes is why does this story matter? And this case is about much more than a single arrest. It raises important questions about how federal authorities investigate organized gangs, why complex cases can take years to build, and how prosecutors use racketeering laws to target entire criminal enterprises rather than isolated crimes. Those are the questions that we'll explore throughout today's episode. Now, one of the most important misunderstood laws in the federal criminal justice system is RICO. What exactly is racketeering, and why do federal prosecutors use RICO laws to dismantle violent gangs? And before we continue with the allegations in this case, we also want to answer one important question. Why did this become a federal case instead of remaining a local homicide investigation? And the answer begins with what I started with, a law known as RICO. You've probably heard that term in movies and television, but many people don't know what it actually means. And RICO stands for the Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act. Congress passed that law in 1970 to help prosecutors dismantle organized criminal enterprises rather than simply arresting one person at a time. Now, originally, RICO was aimed primarily at organized crime families. So to put that in perspective or give you a visual, you can think of, you think of the Godfather movies. And back in the 60s and 70s, those types of criminal crime families were very big, and that's why this act was passed in Congress. Today, prosecutors also use it against gangs, drug trafficking organizations, prison gangs, and other criminal enterprises that allegedly operate as ongoing organizations. The important thing to understand is that RICO is not about a single crime. Instead, prosecutors attempt to show that an organization existed and that it operated over time and that members committed multiple criminal acts to benefit that organization. And according to the indictment, prosecutors allege that the Red Light Militia functioned as that type of criminal enterprise. They allege the organization engaged in violent crime, firearms trafficking, narcotics trafficking, robberies, and other criminal activity over an extended period. Those allegations will ultimately have to be proven in court. Now, another question many people ask is why did investigators wait so many years before bringing charges? And the alleged murder happened in May of 2017. The indictment wasn't unsealed until now. While we don't know every detail of the investigation, long delays are not unusual in complex federal gang investigations. Investigators often spend years gathering evidence before presenting a case to a federal grand jury. And that evidence can include witness interviews, digital evidence, social media records, financial records, firearms tracing, forensic testing, and evidence linking multiple suspects together. And rather than rushing to make an arrest, investigators frequently focused on building the strongest case possible. Now, federal investigations can take years and cases are complex. Evidence has to be ironclad, and then there is the legal and procedural requirements. It all takes a lot of time. And in this case, the Justice Department released also highlighted something that reflects how modern investigations have changed. Officials specifically thanked investigators assigned to digital forensics, intelligence analysis, and the complex analytics and social media enhancement team. And that tells us something. Today's criminal investigations don't rely on eyewitnesses or physical evidence. Digital evidence has become one of the most valuable investigative tools available. Everything from text messages and location data to social media activity and electronic communications can become part of a federal investigation. And of course, any evidence introduced by prosecutors must still be evaluated and challenged in court, and the defendant has the right to contest it. Now, so far, we've examined why this case became a federal prosecution case and how racketeering investigations are built. Let's shift our focus to the broader picture by examining gang violence in America and what the latest crime statistics tell us, and how investigators are working to dismantle organized criminal enterprises. So far, we've examined the allegations in this federal indictment and discussed why prosecutors use federal racketeering laws. Now let's take a step back and look at the broader issue. How significant is gang violence in the United States? The answer is that gangs remain a serious public safety concern, but the impact varies greatly from one community to another. Some cities experience relatively little gang-related violence, while others continue to struggle with organized criminal groups involved in drug trafficking, firearm offenses, robberies, and homicides. Understanding the statistics helps put individual cases like this one into context. Now, one important point is that there's no single nationwide database that captures every gang member or every gang-related crime. Instead, federal agencies combine information from local law enforcement, task forces, intelligence reports, and criminal investigations to better understand gang activity. Because definitions and reporting practices differ among jurisdictions, estimates can change over time. And that's why it's important to rely on official government sources instead of sensational headlines. Now, how do gang investigations work? The indictment that was announced in this case illustrates that partnership. According to the Department of Justice, the investigation involved Homeland Security investigators, the New York City Police Department, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and assistance from the FBI. The press release also credits specialized teams in digital forensics, as I mentioned earlier, and intelligence analysis and social media investigations. That level of coordination is common in large federal gang investigations because criminal organizations often operate across jurisdictions and involve multiple suspects. Now, another important statistic involves homicide investigations themselves. So let's look at the case summary. According to the FBI's latest Crime Data Explorer, less than half of reported murders and non-negligent manslaughters are cleared each year by arrest or exceptional means. That means many homicide investigations remain open for months or even years before investigators identify enough evidence to bring charges. This federal indictment involves an alleged murder from May of 2017, demonstrating that investigators may continue working a case for years if they believe additional evidence can be developed. Cold cases and long-running investigations are not unusual, particularly when prosecutors are attempting to prove a broader criminal enterprise rather than a single offense. Now, the biggest question that I receive, and that I even have myself, is why do some cases take years? And one of the most interesting aspects of this case is the alleged use of social media. According to the indictment, prosecutors allege that Johnston publicly displayed her leadership role through gang-related images, symbols, and other identifiers on social media. And over the past decades, social media has become an increasingly important investigative tool. Investigators may analyze publicly available posts, photographs, videos, communications, and other digital evidence to better understand alleged relationships, organizational structures, and timelines. Of course, simply appearing in a photograph or making a social media post does not establish criminal guilt. Prosecutors must still prove every element of every charge beyond a reasonable doubt in court. So we've looked at the broader picture of how federal investigators build long-term gang cases and what the statistics tell us about organized crime. As we wrap up today's episode, let's look at what happens next in the federal criminal justice process. Because this case, in its early stages, today's announcement marks that beginning, not the end of the legal process. An indictment simply means that a federal grand jury determined there was enough evidence to formally charge the defendant with federal crimes. It's not a finding of guilt. The burden now shifts to federal prosecutors who must prove every element of every charge beyond a reasonable doubt if the case proceeds to trial. Throughout that process, the defendant has constitutional rights, including the right to legal counsel, the right to confront witnesses, and the right to present a defense. Those protections are fundamental to the American justice system and are applied in every criminal case. Now let's look at the federal criminal process. One aspect of this case that deserves attention is the length of the investigation that I've been talking about throughout this episode. The alleged murder occurred in May of 2017. The indictment was not unsealed until 2026. That's nearly a 9-year gap, and it illustrates an important point. Some of the most complex violent crime investigations require extraordinary patience. Investigators may spend years following leads, identifying witnesses, and tracing firearms analyzing digital evidence, and coordinating across multiple agencies before prosecutors believe they have enough evidence to seek an indictment. For victims' families, that process can feel painfully slow. For investigators, the goal is not simply making an arrest, it's building a case that can withstand the scrutiny of federal court or any court for that matter. So, what are the lessons that we can take away from this case? And cases like this remind us that organized crime has evolved. Today's investigations often involve digital evidence, interstate activity, financial analysis, and cooperation among local, state, and federal agencies. Technology has changed both how criminal organizations communicate and how investigators gather evidence. As those methods evolve, so do the strategies law enforcement uses to investigate violent crime. And whether these allegations are ultimately proven in court will be decided through the judicial process. Here at Crime Stats Daily, our goal isn't to speculate or to sensationalize. Our mission is to examine crime through verified facts, official records, and reliable statistics so you can better understand how the criminal justice system works. We'll continue to follow this case as it develops and report on significant updates based on official court filings and announcements. If you found today's breakdown informative, please follow and subscribe to Crime Stats Daily. It really will help our channel grow and get this information out to others who are interested. Each week, we're going to examine major crime stories, federal investigations, and national crime statistics to separate fact from speculation. If there's a federal case or crime trend you would like us to cover, please leave a comment below. I will read your suggestions, and they often will inspire future episodes. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Kim, and this has been Crime Stats Daily. Until next time, stay informed, stay aware, and stay safe, and I'll see you in the next episode.